Now back to our top story this morning. Suella Braverman has attacked the Prime Minister's approach to the Rwanda migrant plan. Writing in the Telegraph, the former Home Secretary claimed Rishi Sunak's plan to deport migrants to Rwanda will fail unless he opts out of European human rights law. The Supreme Court ruled the current scheme. It was unlawful. That ruling was on Wednesday.
Joining us now is the former advisor to Tony Blair, John McTernan. Suella Braverman is proving to be quite the thorn in the PM's side, front, back, everywhere. Foot, isn't she? With her 5-point plan, she says that there are going to be no flights to Rwanda before the election unless he follows her lead.
Well, she's right, there'll be no flights to Rwanda. The Supreme Court have been absolutely clear that they don't believe the Home Office. They don't trust Rwanda, and Suella's right, changing the words in a treaty won't change that. However, the heart of Suella's plan is an amazing idea. She says that all access to English common law should be suspended. Now, there is nothing conservative about a proposal that anybody in the UK, in England, should lose access to common law. And I think that tells you how far you have to go, in her mind, in a almost revolutionary sense, dictatorial sense. I've never heard of this. I would think we didn't lose access to common law during the Second World War, during the general strike. It's a very, very extreme thing, which tells you there are huge obstacles which are actually... I think Rishi Sunak should have said, look, fair enough, the Supreme Court won't let us do this.
We've all learned this new word, refoulement, which came out of the Supreme Court, of course, but returning those people back to the country that they come from. Suella Braverman makes a great play on this idea of notwithstanding, putting this clause of notwithstanding. Again, it's not a term that's in common parlance, but essentially it means in spite of, i.e. new legislation that supersedes old.
Well, but she's again, it's another way of her saying we have, and we have had for a very long time, core protections in English law, but notwithstanding the fact that those are in law, you can't have them.
We don't like the law, so let's rip it all up.
Well, let's say some people don't get it, so you can't have it, but you could. Now, I think the law applies to everybody. Be you ever so high, the law is above you. And I think that's the contradiction at the heart of this. I can't imagine Margaret Thatcher's Conservative Party allowing this kind of discussion. It's a violation of what it is to be English.
So if we ditch Rwanda, many of our viewers are saying it's time to ditch Rwanda, turn the boats back is what they're saying. What would you say if you were advising the Prime Minister? What would you do?
Well, first, I'd have sacked Suella a long time ago. But what I'd do I'd say a treaty with France. I'd say let's have a treaty with France and let's process people who want to apply for asylum and refugee status in the UK, in France. You don't have to get in a boat. You can go to this office here, and then swift processing. At the moment, the average civil servant, I think, in the Home Office does 3 cases a week. So faster processing, and basically 8 out of 10 people who apply get refugee asylum status. They come to Britain. The 2 out of 10 who don't, put them on a plane, send them back.
So why haven't they done that? We've given 500 million quid to France to sort out some of the problems.
Because we've never explored that. That's what Labour's been talking behind the scenes to the Tory party about, the French government about. And those are plans. You process people faster and you process them in France. I think it is, in the end, the European Union, and France particularly, don't trust this government because of the way they've treated the post-Brexit relationships. It needs a reset. And you've seen Keir Starmer go to The Hague, Keir Starmer go to meet President Macron. Is to say, let's have the relationship that you can trust us to do this thing.
What about relationships within Sir Keir Starmer's own party at the moment? At a low, losing 10 frontbenchers and parliamentary advisors this week over his stance on a ceasefire. He's holding the line, but is he losing his party as he does it?
Look, that's a good question. I think he's not losing the party because everybody who's gone to the back bench has said they're going to be fighting for a Labour government at the next election, that this is not about what they think about Keir Starmer, it's what they think about the best way to end the killing in Gaza.
But he'd have a much harder problem if he was in government right now and facing a similar challenge.
If he was in government, to be honest, he'd have probably 400 Labour MPs a huge number to pick from the ministry, but also every single person thinking about resigning would have a ministerial car, a ministerial office, a ministerial title, a ministerial salary.
So he would use leverage over them, is what you're
saying?
That's
what politics is about, leverage. When you whip in the opposition, all you've got is the position you've got, an unpaid position. When you're whipping in government, you're saying, if you stop being a minister, you're probably a backbencher for the rest of your career. And people go into politics for their constituents, they go into politics for their beliefs, they go into politics for their career. But that's
I'm a little bit.
Well, I am a little bit shocked.
Secretary, I'm just talking how you'd actually.
No, it's quite cynical, really, isn't it?
Well, that's the point. I mean, I do
straightforward.
Hope.
People want promotion in every.
But don't you? I mean, I really hope that the vast majority of members of Parliament go in for a good reason, which is to make the country better, to look after their constituents. And actually, whether or not you have a ministerial car shouldn't be up there on the list of priorities.
But people persuade themselves that they make the difference when they're a junior minister and they might get to cabinet, and if they're in cabinet they might get to be the Prime Minister, and then they might make the big change. Like, politics is a career like anything else. I think the core of this is people do want the killing to end, they want peace and security. The problem is, and we've probably discussed it before and we may discuss it again, you can't have a treaty, a peace treaty, a ceasefire with a terrorist organisation unless they want to have that too. Hamas could release the hostages today, and then that would change everything on the ground.
It would. Can we just talk about the opinion polls?
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier, that Labour has a very convincing lead, obviously, across all of those polls. What would your advice be to Starmer about winning the next election? Is it to do as little as possible so that the Conservative Party actually self-implode?
Yeah, no. Look, in politics, particularly progressive politics, centre-left politics, you've got to give people something to hope for. And I think one of the dangers of the current situation is the current government make it seem like nothing can ever change in the country, that the only way to change the welfare system is to make people poorer. The only way to change the immigration system is to make it harsher for people. That actually you have to have almost a campaign that goes, no, Britain could be better. The only thing holding our country back, the great country of Great Britain, is the current government. Replace them and we can do this on housing, this on planning, this on your schools, this in your locality, this in the health service. It'll take time. We've all got to work together, which is why there's missions. But I think that sense of lift and hope, and you have to give some details about that. You can't simply go, look at them, they're a clown, it's a clown car, clown show.
What about Rishi Sunak's decision this week to bring back David Cameron into the Foreign Office? Would you be advising Sir Keir Starmer to take a similar tactic and bring back his new chum, Sir Tony Blair?
Oh, look, Lord Blair would be a great appointment to any cabinet. However, I think Tony is fine where he is running the Tony Blair Institute.
We didn't expect David Cameron to come back, though, did we?
No, I know, but No. I would never have advised David Cameron coming back. Look at his foreign policy record: Brexit disaster, Syria disaster, Libya disaster. He's not a man who's ever known for his foreign policy chops. He was actually really bad at foreign policy. And he's a man who has spent time since being Prime Minister, being an MP, working in the private sector. And he's still got questions to answer about Lex Greensill and what he did there. I think it's a bit... given that the Financial Times are the people who broke the Greensill story, I imagine, and they're one of the few papers that cover fully foreign policy, I imagine there'll be an FT correspondent at every press conference David Cameron gives going, what about Greensill? And I think that may dog him. It had theatre, but it may look to unravel, like a lot of Rishi's things do.
What message does it send out to the electorate? Those people that voted for Brexit. David Cameron was a Remainer, of course. He didn't want us to leave the European Union. When we voted to leave, he then scarpered. He wanted nothing to do with the result. What does that say to the country? Interestingly, on the back of the announcement that David Cameron was back in government, having been given a peerage, 700 people defected immediately to Reform UK, and you're starting to see people who are lifelong Tories moving parties.
Look, I think you're making a good point, which is that the Conservative Party under Rishi Sunak doesn't know which way it's facing. Is it trying to win the Red Wall, or is it abandon the Red Wall? Is it trying to appeal to Leavers, or is it trying to get Remainers? So you say maybe David Cameron appeals to the Blue Wall, the more Remainy part of the Tory coalition. The problem is, you then have Jeremy Hunt briefing, we're going to be brutal to benefit claimants. Now, is that for the Red Wall or the Blue Wall? You've got to choose the horse. And the great thing about, you know, what Harold Wilson said about politics, if you can't ride two horses at once, you shouldn't be in the circus. And well, that's one thing Boris Johnson was able to do. He was able to appeal to the red wall and the blue wall. And Cameron doesn't help Rishi Sunak because they've not decided which way they want to go.
Does he help him, though, on the world stage? He manages to deal with the diplomacy, the global diplomacy. He's a big figure, isn't he? And let Rishi Sunak concentrate on the pretty big problems he's got at home.
That's true, but I think it also makes the PM look a little a smaller figure.
That he's had to delegate
he's
to
delegating
his
that
predecessor.
And also, you can see that he also Rishi Sunak also likes. He liked the Elon Musk thing. He likes the international platforms. So you know, if there's going to be fighting about who goes to the next G7 meeting and things, who gets the jet, who flies,
who's in charge?
Well, who's in charge? Because the first statement that David Cameron made, somebody read it out to me when I was doing a radio interview, and it's a page and a half, and it strays into domestic policy. Foreign Secretary should be Foreign Secretary, not the real Deputy Prime Minister.
John McTernan, thank you very much indeed for being with us this morning.